So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! Every single year in the NFL draft cycle, the media hypes up a lot of different players. They're going to tell you that these players are great, that they can't miss, and when your team drafts them, that they're putting themselves in a better position to succeed. But unfortunately, the inevitable truth is that a lot of these players aren't going to turn out to be the players we thought they could be as prospects. And despite as much as we may like a prospect, despite how much we may like a player and how confident we may be in their abilities, it is bound to happen that there are going to be a couple of trap picks in the first to second round of the NFL draft. Prospects that we think are going to be really good, prospects that we think are going to be great, all pro caliber players, and either due to poor coaching, poor development, poor utilization, or just overdrafting a player, those guys never quite live up to expectation. And today, we're going to take a look at a couple of players that I think could potentially be some trap picks. Guys that I don't even think are bad football players, but I think in the wrong situation, in the wrong development cycle, or potentially with the wrong usage, they may not end up living up to their full potential and may not end up being quite as good as a lot of people think that they can be right now. So with that being said, let's hop into the first one, and it's going to be a very, very controversial one. But I think Cooper DeJean is very much a player that is going to be hit or miss in the NFL. I either think Cooper DeJean is going to be a very, very strong, very good safety prospect, or I think he's going to be a very underwhelming cornerback in the NFL. The Cooper DeJean stands at 6 foot and weighs 203 pounds. He has a 9.85 RAS score, which personally, I don't quite see how he got that 9.85. He only has 2 individual RAS grades above a 9.27, and everything else is about an 8 or below. So I'm not totally sure how that worked out, but I do admit that he is a very good athlete. I don't think he's an outstanding athlete, right? He ran a 4.4 40. His vertical and his broad were good, but not elite, right? He was a good all-around athlete, but nothing about his game, nothing about his athletic testing showed him to be an elite athlete from a speed, explosiveness, or an agility grading. Now, I will say that Cooper DeJean, I think, is an amazing slot receiver. I think he is a really, really good nickel prospect. I think he's got versatility to play inside, outside, as well as safety, and he's a very productive player. 7 interceptions over the last 2 years is nothing to scoff at, and when you look at him statistically, he looks really, really good, right? On the outside on the boundary last year, he gave up just under 200 receiving yards and 0 touchdowns while walking away with 2 interceptions. So why do I say that Cooper DeJean is potentially in a bust territory? And why do I think that he's potentially a trap pick for the NFL? Well, personally, when I watch Cooper DeJean on the outside, he is significantly more underwhelming than he is in the slot. When he's in the slot, he is around the football constantly. He is tackling well. He is driving through tackles. He is one of the best playmakers on the field. But on the outside, he's really not that impactful as a cornerback, right? He's not really a player that teams are afraid to attack necessarily. And he's not a guy that's making the same amount of plays on the outside as he is on the inside. So I think Cooper DeJean has a path to success in the NFL, being a slot cornerback and being a great safety. I think if a team drafts him expecting him to be the number 1 cornerback in the NFL, I think they're going to be a little bit underwhelmed. And you might look at it and say, okay, well, Cooper DeJean statistically is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. That is true, but then you have to take into account who the competition that he played was, right? Take a look at his competition last year. Nebraska ranked as the, I believe, 5th from last passing offense. They ranked 129th in the country. Rutgers ranked 127th. Minnesota ranked 126th. Michigan ranked as the 82nd passing attack. Northwestern, the 96th. Wisconsin, the 71st. Purdue, the 86th. Michigan State, the 92nd, with Penn State being the 79th best passing attack. So in the entirety of his conference play this year, He did not face a passing attack better than the 71st in the country. And when you look at the out-of-conference schedule, he only played one team the entire season that actually had a top 50 passing attack. So it didn't necessarily matter if Cooper DeJean was that lockdown of a corner or not, because those teams couldn't pass anyway. Nebraska, Rutgers, Minnesota, Michigan, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan State, and Penn State all had at best the 79th passing attack in the NCAA. So there was nobody to challenge him. There was no quarterback to throw at him. There was no wide receiver to really put him to the test. And the last time he really got put to the test was in 2022 versus Ohio State, where he got beat several times over. He got exposed on the outside. He got exposed on the inside. He did not have a very good game versus Ohio State. And yeah, it's Ohio State. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. It's Emeka Ibuka. It's Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's elite prospects, all first-round wide receivers. But those are the type of guys you're going to be playing in the NFL. And the last time he played them, he didn't look very good. So I do think Cooper DeJean, in the right system, if he's asked to play slot cornerback, if he's asked to move to safety, he will thrive and be really, really good. I could see him having a very Brian Branch-esque rookie season in the slot. But again, if you draft him and you put him on the boundary, I think he's going to be really, really underwhelming and not ever live up to his full potential as a prospect. Now, another player I think is potentially on bust watch, and a player that a lot of people, again, are going to disagree with. I don't necessarily think Xavier Worthy is going to be the top tier wide receiver in the NFL that other people seem to believe. Xavier Worthy is 5'11", 165 pounds. And yeah, it is great that he ran a 4.21 40-yard dash and broke the combine record. And I have no doubts and no questions about his elite athleticism or his elite quickness. I do not have a problem with his speed. I think his speed absolutely shows up on game day. I think that agility absolutely shows up on game day. I actually even think his route running is pretty solid deep down the field. I think he runs a really good go, a really good post. I think he runs a really solid comeback route. There are good things to like about Xavier Worthy's game. And I do think, in the right system with the right usage, Xavier Worthy can be a really good wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, but I don't necessarily think he's going to become a true X or wide receiver 1 in the offense. And when you look at guys with elite speed, right, you look at guys that walk into the combine and they walk out with their draft stock a half a round or a full round higher because of the 40, they very rarely ever work. And I do have concerns with his durability. I have concerns with his role, and I have concerns with the history of the players at that position, right? Because yeah, Tyreek Hill is phenomenal. Tyreek Hill is a great player, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But for every elite wide receiver with speed like Tyreek Hill, you have Jameson Williams, a Tyquan Thornton, a Paris Campbell. You have I'm trying to think of the guy that the Eagles drafted before Justin Jefferson, whose name is currently escaping me. Jalen Reagor. You have a Jalen Reagor, right? There are 4 to 5 guys every single year like that for every single Tyreek Hill. So the odds that Xavier Worthy becomes that Tyreek Hill-esque player are significantly lower than you might think, right? I think he's going to be more of a Jameson Williams. He's going to be more of a Paris Campbell, a guy that could potentially go for 4 or 5, maybe even 600 yards and 4 to 5 touchdowns in a season. But if you're drafting a player in the first round or the early second round, I just don't think Xavier Worthy ever will be a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, because I don't think he will be a wide receiver 1 from a volume standpoint. I do think he's going to be good for some big plays here and there, but I don't think the volume's ever going to get to the point where you can justify a first-round pick on Xavier Worthy. So I think he's going to be a good prospect. I don't ever think he's necessarily going to be in the top 15, 20, maybe not even top 32 wide receiver conversation come a couple years down the road. Now, another player that I am not nearly as high on as other people is Marshon Kneeland. Marshon Kneeland, the Western Michigan prospect, is a fan favorite, and a lot of people see him as a sleeper in this draft class. 6'3", 275 pounds. Last season with Western Michigan, 4.5 sacks, 7.5 TFLs, and 28 hurries. And I agree. I think that his explosiveness, I think his agility are both things that are off the charts. He's a really good athlete, and I have no doubts about that. But his production is very concerning. The fact that he never ever had a real productive season at Western Michigan is concerning, because if you can't get past guys in the MAC, you're really probably not going to have too much success against guys in the NFL. His production was really bad. I do think he is a very big project type player. He has very little bend to his game. He has very few pass rushing moves. He is a raw athlete with an elite first step and some really good quickness, but for the most part, he's just running through gaps. For the most part, he's not winning around the edge. He's not winning with power. He's not winning with technique. He's just winning because his first step is quicker than anybody else in the MAC, and that just isn't going to happen at the next level. Now, I do think there are a lot of things to like about Marshon Kneeland. I like his quick first step. I think he has really good center of gravity, and I think he does have some power at times. He's incredibly quick, but if you're a guy that is a project out of the MAC with no production and no bend out as an edge rusher, I think it's going to be really hard for you to succeed as a one-trick pony in the NFL, especially if you don't develop a little bit more strength, if you don't develop a little bit more bend. It's going to be really hard for him to succeed because you're not going to get as many open looks in the NFL as you are in the MAC. And even with all the open looks he got, even with all the chaos that he reaped without the stats, I just don't see a lot of that coming true in the NFL without a lot and a significant amount of development going forward. I think he should be a third-round pick. I saw people saying he could potentially even be a high second-round pick. I personally do not think that at all. I think Marshon Kneeland is a day 2, maybe even a day 3 pick. I just think there's a lot of work to be done there. I agree that the athlete is phenomenal, but the player you're getting probably isn't going to be very impactful day 1, if not even the rest of year 1. And then the last player I really want to talk about, and a player that I have been notoriously low on this season, is Kalen Carson. Now, Kalen Carson is a player that in his first 2 years wasn't bad at Wake Forest, had 3 interceptions, looked like a promising young cornerback, but over the last 2 years, really struggled. In 2023, he allowed 218 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions through the air with a 93 quarterback rating when targeted in just 8 games. It was a bad season, but it wasn't an awful season, right? There were still some things to be excited about. And then 2023 came along, and unfortunately, Kalen Carson allowed 436 passing yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, 0 interceptions yet again, and allowed a passer rating of 98.2 when targeted. And it's not like Kalen Carson is a great athlete or a great project either. He's 5'11", 199 pounds, put up 6 reps on the bench, had a 9.6 broad jump, and a 4.52 40-yard dash. None of those numbers are impressive. He is small for the cornerback position. He's not especially fast for the cornerback position. He's not exceptionally strong from the cornerback position. And for the broad jump, I jump a 9.6. We did athletic testing here at a D3 school for soccer. I jumped a 9.6. So even that isn't nearly as impressive as it may seem. I don't think Kalen Carson's a great athlete. I don't think he's great with the ball. I don't think he's great with the ball in the air. Like, there really isn't a whole lot about Kalen Carson I like, other than the fact that he's a very willing tackler, which is great for a special teams player. But if the only value you're bringing is to the special teams, I really just don't think he should be anything more than a round 5 to 6 prospect. I see him being drafted in the second round, and I think whoever drafts him in the second round is in for a very poor surprise. But with all of that being said, those are kind of my trap players in this draft class. I don't think all of them are bad players. I think Cooper DeJean will be a fine player in the NFL. I just don't know if he's going to live up to the first round hype if they try him at cornerback. I think Xavier Worthy would be an excellent second round pick. But again, I can't justify a first round pick for a player that I don't think will ever be a true wide receiver 1. I think that Marshon Kneeland has a lot of developing to do. And quite honestly, I just don't think Kalen Carson is all that good. But with all of that being said, those are my trap players in the game, in the NFL draft. Let me know down in the comments below what players you think might be traps in this class, what players might go in the first, second, or maybe even third round of the NFL draft that probably you just don't see living up to the expectations or the potential hype. I'm very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think about it. With all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go live.